Welcome back to Basement Horrors, and we just got done watching The Outwaters. Now, I have a lot to break down with this movie, and honestly, there's a lot to go into. But before we do, make sure to like and subscribe. That helps the channel grow, that helps us continue to put out horror content like we've been doing. Also, you can follow us on Twitter, and we are on Reddit as well. And we have a bunch of new shirts up on the Etsy that will be linked below, which includes this really awesome new audition shirt. If you order a shirt off the Etsy, you'll be getting a handmade shirt from me delivered directly to your door. There is a bunch of movie shirts up there, including all of the best extreme and exploitation films, as well as some newer films as well. So head over to the Etsy and check out all the new shirts we have. Okay, now let's get into The Outwaters. Now, before we dig deep into everything that happens in this movie, I just want to say that if you have never heard of this movie or you're just now hearing of this movie, this is a experimental horror movie. Going into it, I was under the impression that the movie was a lot like Skinamarink, which was heavily compared to it because both have came out recently. Both are experimental horror films. A lot of times I saw that they were playing at the same place at the same time where you could see double features of them. So after watching Skinamarink and loving it so much, I was very excited for this movie. And that excitement turned to disappointment fairly quickly in this movie, so let me get into it. Now, the movie is based around 4 people who make their way to the desert to shoot a music video. And when it begins, it starts off with a 911 call with some distorted audio of a woman screaming and asking for help. And it's saying that these 4 individuals have not been seen since August 8th, 2017, and that the footage you are about ready to watch was found way later on in 2022, where they were able to actually find out what happened to these missing people. Yeah, a very stereotypical cliche when it comes to found footage films is having that beginning where you're like, oh, well, this is where we found it. Now, the 4 individuals are Scott, Robbie, Michelle, and Angela. Scott and Robbie are brothers. Angela, at one point, I thought was their sister, but I don't believe that she is after watching the movie. And Michelle is one of their friends who is a singer. Now, the opening call, like I said, does have some distorted audio on the 911 call. And what it really reminded me of was Job of a Cowboy. If you don't know who that is, they have an album called Doom where they have an intro. And the intro sounded pretty much exactly like this. I'll play a second of it right now. So yeah, you can hear the similarities a little bit if you've seen this movie. Now after this, it cuts to Scott and Robbie having a conversation where a present is given, which was their dad's handkerchief tied to a hiking backpack, as well as a notebook to be able to write in, and a necklace from their mother. I tried to read into this a little bit more to try to figure out what is going on, because there is a undertone of parents in this movie for some reason, but once we get into this, you'll realize that it really doesn't have anything to do with any of this. Now, like I said, Michelle is a singer, so there's a point at the very beginning of the movie where she is singing. I think this is kind of to give you an intro into her character and why they're going to go out to the desert, which was to film the music video. And this just came off as really cringy to me. And it kind of set up for Michelle just being extremely annoying the entire movie, in my opinion. She goes into deep detail about her mom pretty much the whole entire movie. And it starts with this scene. And again, like I said, that underlying tone of having to do with parents, again, it makes no sense to me, but it is brought up quite a bit in this movie. And Michelle is 90% of it. And man, does she get annoying quick. Now, there's a scene that really makes me laugh where Robbie is talking to Angela over FaceTime, just going over everything as far as what outfits to bring, how she's going to do Michelle's makeup, everything having to do with what they're going to do in the desert. And Robbie asks Angela, you've never been to the desert before? Like that's something people do. I'm sorry, I don't live near a desert, but it was my understanding that, you don't go to the desert unless you're actually doing something for work or something, not just going and hanging out in the desert. Now, I understand that they're going to shoot a music video, which, like I said, you go to the desert to shoot a music video. That's for work, but Who just says, oh, you've never been to the desert before? Like, no, who just goes to the desert? What are you talking about? Another thing I realized at the beginning of this movie was there's a lot of jump cuts, and that's not something you see often in found footage. Found footage has an appeal of getting you the action up front, kind of in real time. It's not always in real time. It's not one shot most of the time, but if you watch found footage films, the point of them is the fact that you are seeing everything supposedly in real time of what's happening with the main characters. And this cuts around so much that it kind of takes you out of that. Now, everybody is in California now, kind of hanging out, getting ready to head out to the desert. This is the first point when you start to realize that Angela is also super annoying. So Michelle's annoying, Angela's annoying. You're starting to hit on something here that most of the main characters here are just super annoying and dumb. So they start to head out there and they stop randomly at a cave to walk through it. No reason, pointless scene. Also, they stop at like this little pond thing to swim in or lake or something. Again, another pointless scene. So at this point, we are a half an hour into the movie and nothing has happened. Like nothing has happened. We have just got a half an hour intro to what is going to happen in this movie. That could have been 10 minutes. They could have been at the desert 10 minutes in. You could have had a 10-minute intro introducing us to all of these characters without all of these pointless scenes, but instead you drug it out for a half an hour introducing us to these characters and giving us dumb scenes that nobody asked for, that has nothing to do with this movie at all. Nothing to do with what happens. Nothing. Before they even get to the desert, it is a half an hour. Which is, it's crazy to me. Now they finally make it to the desert, and of course Michelle starts singing because that's what Michelle does. She starts singing and talking about her mom. Like that's the only things that she brings to the table in this film. Now at one point Robbie comes across an axe with blood on it, kind of stuck into the ground. Again, random, but I understand that there's some foreshadowing. They have to put it in a movie. So pretty much the whole entire first day in the desert is a wash. They don't do anything. And then that's when they start hearing noises outside of the tents that sound like thunder to me. That's all it sounds like, is like really loud thunder. And it kind of reminds me of like the Blair Witch Project, where they're inside the tents and they can hear stuff kind of rustling around outside of the tents. That's sort of what it sounds like, but it just generally just sounds like thunder. Then they decide to all get out of the tents and start walking around, and they're like, what's going on? What is happening? It's thunder. Like, if you were going to have this be something scary, or setting up something scary happening, or setting up the rest of the film, why would you just have the noises thunder? It's just thunder. Like, Angela's running around the desert going, what's going on? Like, dude, it's thunder. What are you talking about? So while they're out wandering about with all of the like thunder going on, they're getting random shots of bugs. So there's like a grasshopper and some ants. Again, pointless. It doesn't make any sense why they are there. So then it was morning, they were talking about the weird shit happening. And like, what weird shit? There's thunder and bugs. Like, you're in the desert. Why would you be like shocked about the fact that there was thunder and that there were bugs? Guess what? 45 minutes in now, still nothing has happened. We got some thunder and we got some shots of bugs. That's it. 45 minutes into this movie. Robbie sticks a microphone into a hole, which he could hear these really weird noises coming from it. And that's when it clicked to me. It's like, why are you guys investigating this stuff? Like, why are you going out of your way to investigate stuff? That's like one of my biggest problems with this movie, is that you guys are going out to shoot a music video in the desert, and all of a sudden you start to think things are weird, so you're gonna go do investigations on it. Like, that's not why you're there. A normal human being wouldn't do that stuff. A normal human being wouldn't stay in the desert and do that stuff. They would stay at a hotel outside of the desert in some town and then drive to the desert to shoot the music video. If it took multiple days, they would go back to their hotel room at night. It doesn't make any sense. These people aren't geologists. They're not scientists. They're there to shoot a music video. Why? Like, why are they investigating all of this stuff? And again, like I said, Michelle is like putting her hands on the ground and talking about these vibrations and the sounds they make. Michelle just being annoying again. She's not a geologist. What are you talking about, Michelle? You have no idea what is happening or any, like, why are you trying to speak on this stuff? Then we get a wasted 5 minutes of Michelle just running around the desert for no reason. And then it cuts to nighttime. And when it cuts to nighttime, the noises come back, obviously. Again, Blair Witch-esque, where there's sounds around. Then it turns to them investigating again. Like, they get out of the tents again, and it's just them walking around in the dark, and you can't see anything. Robbie has a flashlight that has a singular light, like, pointed, and that's all it is. You can't see anything that's going on other than hearing noises. He sees some flashing white lights. Other than that, there's literally nothing going on. And let me remind you, at this point, we're an hour into the movie. An hour into the movie, they're just now starting to explore at night, trying to figure out what's going on, and it took an hour to get to this point. That is ridiculous. An hour to get to the point where the movie is pretty much just starting. You hear some like footsteps running up to one of them, and it sounds like stabbing noises, but again, you don't know what's happening. You can't see anything. So as all this craziness is happening, it ends up being daytime again, and Robbie is carrying around the camera by himself. He runs into this like weird snake thingy. If I could put it into context, it's like, I don't even know. It looks just like a tentacle snake thing. It looks like yeah, that's all it is. It's like a tentacle snake thing that screeches and it runs away from him. Now from here, it's just chaos. It's just pure chaos of not knowing what the hell is happening. At one point, there's a figure standing in front of Robbie covered in blood, holding the axe, and he's begging him just to go away. Robbie then sees the flashing light again, which pulls him into, I would guess, like this lake of blood almost. He gets pulled into this water out of nowhere. It kind of looks like a complete different dimension. You can see like the crack where the light is, but he's just literally underwater, and it's just like an underwater scene in first person perspective, which, sure, I guess that makes sense. A really cool scene was when he popped out of that like dimension or wherever he was in, and he just throws up blood all over the place, which is, I mean, I think that was pretty cool. I mean, I was like, oh yeah, that's cool gore. I mean, it's not really gore, but I mean, it's blood, and that was at least something. Now, here's the part where things start to get confusing for me, and that is, he sees them walking into the desert. So for me, I start to feel like, oh, okay, I'm starting to understand now. I'm starting to understand, yeah, like maybe that weird snake thingy was just in his head, but he did get pulled into this like other realm or universe or something where he was in this blood. Now that he's out, maybe he popped out at a different time period, and he's yelling out their names and they're not saying anything. And I'm like, okay, cool. Now we're getting somewhere. Now I'm getting some treading to understand what is going on in this movie. This is a supernatural kind of event that's happening where he is getting pulled in and out of realities, but nope. No, that's literally not. There was no point in me thinking that, because everything else that happens has nothing to do with that, and it was a completely pointless scene again. He finds Michelle laying on the ground covered in blood. She gets up and starts running from him. Again, you could just let Michelle run completely out of this movie because I don't like her. More scenes with Robbie just walking around in the dark with no contact. And God, you start to hear Michelle singing. And just when I thought she was gone out of this movie, just when I thought she was gone, nope, you have to hear her singing again. He ends up finding Scott in a tent. Scott's also covered in blood. Everybody's covered in blood. There's no really explanation why anybody's covered in blood. I can understand Robbie because he got pulled into that dimension where he was in that blood water, but everybody else, I'm not 100% sure. Now, at this point, we are an hour and a half into the movie. That could be a full movie in itself. An hour and a half in this movie, and you still have no clue what the hell is happening. Them wandering around in the dark with a light, and there's just scenes with blood every now and then. That's it. That's all it's been for an hour and a half. And not even for an hour and a half. That's all it's been for like 25 minutes. Before that, it was just them. And again, now I get confused because the next couple scenes, Robbie's at his mom's house and his mom's covered in blood, but he was just in the desert. And then he was on an airplane and he sees his brother's face covered in blood in the window. Like, what is happening? Is this supernatural? Is it not supernatural? What is going on? So then he snaps back to the desert and it's still dark. He's still walking around and he comes across this monster or creature. And you don't really get a good look at it. You can kind of see its skin and you can hear it, and it sounds like an elk. And then when it's breathing, it sort of sounds, I don't know, like a dinosaur almost. It sounds like what you would hear in like Jurassic Park with like a dinosaur, like a T-Rex right next to you breathing. That's what the breathing sounds like. And when it's making its noise, it sounds just like an elk. And this is where I got even more confused, because is this a monster movie or is this a paranormal movie? What does the monster have anything to do with him going in and out of these realities? What does it have to do with him seeing his past self walking into the desert with everybody else? What does it have to do with him being at his mom's house and on the airplane where he had these visions? If you're going to make a movie, you have to have a premise, and I have no problem with twists and turns and people putting subliminal things in their films, but God dang it, man. You can't follow this thing because now there's a monster. Like, the little snake thing I could understand. It'd be like, cool, maybe that's just a weird thing or something, but now you have a full-blown creature feature on top of a movie that was seeming like it was supernatural. Now, the return of the weird snake thing gets into the tent and it attacks Angela, and somehow, after attacking Angela, makes Angela super hypersexual because she gets naked and just starts rubbing all over her body, and it's like, where did that come from? And again, it cuts, and Robbie looks like he's being carried by something because he's moving very quickly above the ground, but his feet aren't moving, and it seems like he's being carried. And you come to realize that he's being carried by the beast thing that he recently encountered, and it takes him up to the axe that he saw earlier in the film with the blood all over it, and it goes, show them. And then it cuts drastically to him being in this water again in that kind of parallel dimension or whatever the hell it is, because it's not explained. And all you see is the water rustling around. And then again, he pops right out of it, covered in blood again, and he pops right onto a sign that says restricted area. You can't really get a good glimpse on it, but what it looks like, it was like a testing area that they shouldn't have been in. And there's also like a gas mask that looked like what people would wear to avoid like radiation. Yeah, are you trying to pull this in together? Because I really don't understand where this came from either, because this would make sense if the whole entire movie was just based around them having these crazy hallucinations or them having an encounter with this monster, but you can't just give a whole explanation on why these things are happening just because it is this restricted area that could possibly have nuclear radiation or something going on with it. Again, you're just putting another thing into this that makes it more confusing to finally understand what's happening. Robbie ends up finding himself covered in blood, but that really doesn't go anywhere. And then he ends up finding all three of his friends, including his brother, decapitated and their heads on top of poles. I will give him some credit. This part was pretty cool. I actually liked it, but it was way too far into the movie that at that point, it just felt like necessity for them. It felt like they needed to do something because literally nothing had happened. Now, he finds a shark tooth laying out there, and I cannot remember if the shark tooth came from the necklace that was given to them by their mother, or if it was just a random shark tooth. I can't remember what the necklace looked like because you can't get a good look at it at the beginning of the movie. And this is the best part of the movie and also the worst part of the movie, unfortunately. And Robbie, by himself, knowing that he is pretty much all alone in the middle of the desert, just went through this crazy experience where his brother and two of his friends were killed. And that's when he decides to take the shark tooth and cut off his own junk. What? He cuts off his own penis. Like, why? Did this just turn into like a Serbian film or August Underground? Like, where did this come from? And don't get me wrong, this was awesome. I was like, hell yeah, dude, finally something. But then he goes and he cuts his stomach open. He is walking with his intestines just hanging out. And it's super cool. I'm like, hell yeah, dude. Finally we are getting something. Finally, we are getting something. And he just stops. And that's when the movie ends. And god dang it, was I mad. You waited till the very last scene to do something that was actually good. That you could see, that you could feel, that you were like, holy crap, that's awesome. That is sick gore. That is really good prosthetic makeup. That is, I mean, just in general, super cool to have a scene like that. And then you're like, oh, wait, that's the end of the movie. Hold on a second. Then what happened to the monster? Where was he at when he went into those different realities? Why did he see themselves walking in the desert? Once you realize that that's the end and you got no answers whatsoever, It pisses you off so much, at least me personally. And I know you guys are going to say, well, you love Skinamarink. Like, you love Skinamarink and that doesn't give you any answers. Yes, but there is a huge difference between Skinamarink and this movie. They should not be compared because, one, they're completely different movies altogether. Different genres altogether. Different styles of horror altogether. The biggest issue for me is that there is no sense of being able to interpret what is happening. Skinamarink, I can interpret that has to do with either divorce or abuse or neglect or suicide or death of a family member, feeling like your house is being ripped apart. And everybody who has kind of an idea of what's going on in that movie, they can kind of agree on we're right in the same realm. This movie could be taken any way. Is this movie horror? Is it sci-fi? Is it aliens? Is it a creature feature? Is it paranormal? It's like that doesn't make a good movie. When you can have that many interpretations, that means you put too much stuff into your film and it made it way too confusing. So here's my overall take on the film. It is way too long. 2 hours is way too long for this movie. This movie could have been at the most an hour and 20 minutes and it would have been fine. They could have cut stuff that was unnecessary. I probably would have liked it more because you would have got into it quicker. I got so bored. Like, Skinamarink is way less boring to this movie because Skinamarink at least, like, gives me something to wonder about. This movie is just like, it's just a bunch of dark scenes with people covered in blood and there might be a monster or two. No clue what happened. Again, like I said, that's my biggest pet peeve is there's no understanding of what happens in this film or why it's happening. They waited way too long to show the good stuff, which was literally the last scene of the movie was the only good scene. It was okay. I'm not going to sit here and say it's the worst movie ever made because it's not. It is a solid 4 out of 10 for me. And I don't think I can get better than that. If you really sit down with me and try to convince me, you might be able to get me to a 5 out of 10, but it's going to be a 4 out of 10 because I've seen these things done. I've seen found footage movies. I've seen found footage movies very similar to this one that did it better, which was Blair Witch Project. And me personally, I would say the better version of this movie is Mr. Jones that came out in 2013. If you've never seen Mr. Jones, you need to go check it out. It is a very, very good found footage film with a lot of trippiness, a lot of gore, a lot of really crazy stuff that happens a lot like the Outwaters. But guess what? It's just better. It's just better. So I'm sorry if I made anybody mad over this review or if I spoiled anything for anybody because I forgot to say spoiler warnings, but I did put that this was a full review and, you know, you can't hate on me for reviewing an entire film because, well, that's what a review is. But if you personally like this film, okay, cool, good. Like that's your opinion. That is completely fine. You can like this film as much as you want. Me personally, I thought it was lackluster. I was very, very disappointed. I thought this movie was going to be a lot more in your face. I thought it was going to have a lot more gore. Even though there was gore, there wasn't blatant gore that you could see. All I had heard was how terrifying this film was and how it made you afraid of the dark and not wanting to go out places. And the gore was intense. I hate to tell you, it's not. The gore's not great. Cool, he cuts off his penis at the end. That's a dope part. I'm fine with that. That gore was good. He disembowels himself at the end. That's cool. That gore is good. Guess what? Outside of that, literally nothing is good at all. Nothing is redeemable as far as it being experimental or extreme or gory or anything of that nature. Well, that just about does it for me sitting here and ranting for God knows how long. If you've stuck around this long, thank you for watching. Again, if you like the Outwaters, comment down below and let me know why you liked it. And if you didn't, comment down below and let me know why you didn't. If you haven't seen it, go watch it or don't. I just spoiled the entire movie for you, but you might still like it, so you can go watch it. It is on Screambox now, so that is a new streaming service that's gonna kind of compete in the horror market on putting out horror movies and TV shows on demand for people to watch. They do have a free trial right now, so I would suggest going and signing up for it and getting that free trial. It's only like $5 a month after that, so if you definitely like Shudder, then you will like Screambox. So go over there and check out Screambox. Again, like and subscribe. It would mean the world to us. and we will be back soon with another horror video.